During World War II, there was another war being fought, a secret war right on the home front. But its soldiers weren't carrying rifles. Their weapons? Paintbrushes, burlap, and chicken feathers. This is the incredible story of how an army of artists and illusionists fought a war of pure deception. So take a close look at this. Looks like a pretty normal American neighborhood, right? But what if I told you it was all a lie? A massive, elaborate illusion sitting on top of one of the most important buildings in the entire war effort. What you're actually seeing is a giant cover-up designed to fool enemy bombers from 30,000 feet in the air. To understand why they did this, we have to rewind the clock. We're in the days just after the attack on Pearl Harbor. A wave of pure fear is sweeping across the American West Coast. The war had finally come home, and everyone was looking to the skies, just waiting for the other shoe to drop. You see, the problem was that America's most critical assets were basically sitting ducks. These huge factories, like Lockheed and Burbank, and Boeing and Seattle, were pumping out the very planes needed to win the war. And from the air, these massive industrial sites stuck out like a sore thumb. They were perfect targets for an enemy pilot. And the stakes were absolutely colossal. If just one of these factories, let's say Lockheed, was destroyed, it would have meant losing around 3,500 aircraft. That was a blow the military just could not afford. So they needed a new kind of defense, something totally unconventional, and they needed it yesterday. So the US Army came up with a pretty radical idea. If you can't build a fortress around a factory, what if you could just make the factory disappear? The job fell to one guy, an Army engineer, with a really, really unusual set of skills. His name was Colonel John F. Omer. Now, before the war, Omer was fascinated by magic and photography, basically the arts of illusion. He'd studied what the British were doing with concealment and knew exactly how to fool the human eye and the camera lens. His mission was simple to say, but staggering to pull off: hide the entire West Coast war industry. So where do you find the best illusionists on the planet? Well, Hollywood, of course. Omer went on a raid, hitting the backlots of studios like Disney, Paramount, and 20th Century Fox. He drafted set designers, painters, carpenters, prop artists, all the people who built fantasy worlds for a living. Only now, their country needed them to build a fantasy world for real. And this is what they did. Check this out. At Boeing's Plant 2 in Seattle, they built a 26-acre fake suburb right on top of the factory roof. The streets were just burlap, the trees were made from chicken wire and spray-painted feathers, and they even had little wood-framed cars parked in the driveways. From the air, it was a perfect copy of the neighborhoods all around it. Now, the goal here wasn't to create a perfect illusion that you could walk through. It just needed to work for a few crucial minutes. As one aircraft company magazine said back then, if you could confuse an enemy pilot just long enough for your own fighters to get in the air, that small possibility was worth any cost. And here's a great little story that shows just how effective it was. The camouflage was so convincing that friendly American pilots started getting lost trying to find their own airfields. And there's this great story, maybe it's true, maybe not, that the nearby Warner Brothers studio got so paranoid about being mistaken for the camouflaged Lockheed plant that they painted a giant arrow on their roof pointing Lockheed that way. But you know, the Americans weren't the only ones playing these kinds of mind games. Across the Atlantic, the British had been mastering the art of illusion since the war began, creating this nationwide theater of deception to fool the German Luftwaffe. Just look at this map for a second. Every single one of those symbols represents a decoy site. The British built hundreds of them. They created a whole shadow country of fake airfields, fake factories, and even fake burning cities, all to draw bombs away from the real thing. Their system was incredibly sophisticated. First, they had Q sites. These were dummy airfields with fake landing lights to trick bombers at night. Then they had QL sites that looked like the faint glow of a blacked-out city. But their absolute masterpiece of deception was something they called a starfish site. So, what was a starfish site? This is genius. They were designed to look like a city that was already on fire. So after the first wave of German bombers hit a real city, like Bristol, a decoy crew, hiding in a bunker miles away, would light up these massive, controlled fires. The idea was to trick the next wave of bombers into thinking the decoy was the burning city center and drop their bombs there instead. So just imagine it. You're a German pilot, flying in the dark, anti-aircraft fire is all around you. You look down and you see that telltale glow and flicker of a city on fire. It's exactly what you're looking for. This is what you would have seen. From thousands of feet up, these decoys were dangerously convincing. Okay, so all of this brings us to the big question, right? Did any of this actually work? All this money, all this effort, did these burlap suburbs and controlled bonfires actually save lives? Well, the data tells a pretty shocking story. The numbers are just astonishing. By the end of 1941, the British had counted 358 attacks on the real airfields they were trying to protect, and the number of attacks on the fake Q-site decoys, 359. It was basically a 50-50 coin toss for German bombers, which, when you think about it, is an incredible success rate for a bunch of fake lights. And what about those starfish sites meant to protect the cities? Get this. It's estimated that nearly 1,000 tons of German bombs were dropped on these decoy fires instead of on Britain's real towns and cities. That's 1,000 tons of explosives that didn't destroy homes, hospitals, or factories. For decades, the work of these artists and engineers was completely classified. Their story was a secret, but it's finally being told. In March of 2024, the very last surviving members of this unit, which came to be known as the Ghost Army, were awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. It was a long, long overdue honor for the soldiers who fought with creativity as their main weapon. Their battlefield was one of perception, and their ammunition was deception. It really leaves you with a fascinating question for our own time, doesn't it? In an age of satellites, thermal imaging, and constant digital surveillance, could an army of ghosts, an army of illusion, ever fight and win again?